Welcome in, Louisiana, to another episode of Odds and Ends here on bet.NOLA.com and brought to you in partnership with Caesars Sportsbook. I'm Zach Ewing with Devin Jackson and Jim Derry, and it is time to recap another weekend of football. It's time to talk about Jim Derry's teasers and moneyline bets gone wrong yet again. It's time to talk about Devin Jackson winning money and crushing us in big bucks yet again. It's time to talk some baseball playoffs. We got a lot going on, so let's get right into it. First of all, Jim, your big bets this week were the Titans over the Jets and the Saints over the Giants. And you didn't need to cover spreads. You just needed plain old vanilla wins, and it didn't happen for you.
See, I outsmarted myself. I thought I was like, okay, this is one way to get our big bucks back. Surely there's no way the Titans can lose, and the lowly Jets, they're winless. Surely there's no way the Saints can lose to the winless Giants. This is the way I'm getting back, and I'm going to outsmart everybody. Yeah, I'm a dummy. It hurt.
And Devin,
it hurt too.
Yeah. Well, we'll see that on Thursday when we update totals, but I think you're down like 30% of what you started with now. So that's pretty good.
Look, real quick, the sad thing about it, and I texted you guys this yesterday, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if like I'm snake bit or karma's trying to bite me or whatever, but seriously, everything that I touched yesterday that didn't have to do with big bucks won. And I know people say, yeah, right, whatever. I'm not kidding. I mean, my NFL picks column, I had another pretty good week. Can finish with 10 wins if I get a win tonight. So I'm just picking the wrong ones for big bucks.
The Jim Derry Bank of America account is going to have to give the Jim Derry Big Bucks account a loan here before too long. We'll let you pay us off, and we'll increase the balance of fake money. I'm willing to bend the rules for that.
It'll add up to a pizza, I'm sure. I can do that.
Hey, let's get into the weekend results. Let's check out what happened in college football this weekend. And listen, the other part of this was it was a bad weekend for Jim Derry. It was a bad weekend for Louisiana football. LSU in a game, really, if they want to do anything with the season, if they wanted to go anywhere besides, I don't know, the Liberty Bowl or the Music City Bowl or something, they were going to have to win this game. They had the lead the entire night until the final, 3-4 minutes when Auburn scores a touchdown, goes up 24-19, outscored LSU 14-0 in the fourth quarter. LSU throws an interception at the end of the game. Settled for 4 field goals instead of getting touchdowns, couldn't run the ball, just pretty sad sack. And then the other thing here, guys, is if you're looking for the best teams in the country, like look at what Georgia did to Arkansas, look at what Alabama did to Ole Miss, and then look at what Oregon does, laying an egg, losing to Stanford. It's pretty clear right now it's Alabama and Georgia and about 130 dwarves. Devin, what were your impressions of the college football weekend?
A lot of upsets. There were some that I weren't expecting. Definitely not the Oregon one. Definitely not Florida losing to Kentucky. But I think it just shows that pretty much outside Alabama or Georgia, there's really no reliable teams this year. So I think if this is the year, if there's any year that like a group of 5 team like Cincinnati gets in, this would be the year just because everyone is knocking off everyone. So I would not be surprised if there were multiple one-loss teams outside of Alabama. Well, Georgia and Alabama will play at some point, but I think unless one of them loses in the regular season, which I don't see happening at this point, I think both of them are in the playoff for sure. But I think Cincinnati is going to make a real strong push as long as they can win out, because everyone else is just losing at some point in the season.
Yeah, it sure seems like that. I mean, you hit on the other factor or the other score there that was very notable. Cincinnati winning in South Bend, and the Bearcats' schedule right now gets, they're in the American Athletic Conference, which is a good conference, but it's certainly not a Big Ten or an SEC or even a Big 12. And so I think they got to play UCF, SMU, but there's just not a lot of challenges there for Cincinnati. And if they go 12-0, I mean, even 13-0 with an AAC championship victory, you got to let them in. You're going to put Oregon in over them now or something? The Big Ten does have 4 undefeated teams left, Jim. They got Michigan, Michigan State, Iowa, and Penn State. And Iowa, Penn State play next week. We'll talk about that in a minute. But with 4 undefeated teams, there's a pretty good chance the Big Ten may produce an undefeated team as well.
I think that they will. And I know a lot of the experts are don't love Iowa because they can't play offense. They don't have great offense, but I think Iowa is well deserving of their number 3 ranking at the moment. And I think there's an excellent chance that they are the ones that come out of the Big Ten because no one's given them any credit for anything. And all they do is keep beating people. And, Michigan too. Michigan's been outstanding. So who knows? I mean, this season's got a long way to go to play out, but I think Cincinnati's a long shot. I really do. I know they'll probably go undefeated, but when it comes down to the end, people got to vote in, unless you're just doing it for political reasons and saying, oh, we got to get a mid-major or whatever. They're better than a mid. I know it's not a mid-major, but you know what I mean. It's an outside the power conference team. Unless you're just saying we need to do that for the way that it looks, then Cincinnati does not belong with the top 4 teams in the country. But
wait a minute, they just won by 11 points at Notre Dame, who was undefeated. Doesn't that show they belong?
Notre Dame beat Florida State by 3 points and needed a lot of help to win. I'm not convinced. Who cares? Notre Dame is not good. I mean, they're really not. So we're debating here in October. This is something to talk about in November anyway. But my prediction is that unless we're just doing it if Cincinnati beats Tulane, who cares?
Yeah, I guess the other factor here is who else are you putting up? And right now, Oklahoma's still undefeated. They haven't been real impressive. But if they remain undefeated throughout the year, then are we comparing Cincinnati versus Oklahoma versus an undefeated Big Ten champ or maybe a one-loss Ohio State? Then we can have an argument Cincinnati doesn't deserve it. But if Oklahoma loses and at some point you got to get to them when you're talking about who the best teams are. They're on the list somewhere. So anyway,
I think what you're forgetting about Devin is, Zach. Devin just stayed out of it. Devin's been quiet. I think what you're forgetting is the NCAA is about money. TV is about money. They don't care. And they're not going to let Cincinnati in unless they absolutely have to. And so Cincinnati's not only going to have to run the table, they're going to have to get help from other people. Because if it's close between a Michigan or an Oklahoma, money dictates this thing, which is dumb. I don't agree with it, but money dictates this. And they're going to take a Michigan or an Oklahoma over Cincinnati every day in Christmas, and they don't care if Cincinnati's 13-0.
I do love that we're having this debate on October 4th and things are going to change. But here, Cincinnati versus Georgia was the best New Year's Six Bowl last year by far. So people could say, I understand they don't have a lot of fans or whatever, but people are going to watch it if they get in. Change the subject real quick. Devin, where does LSU go from here?
I don't even know at this point. I mean, I don't want to say the loss is surprising because they played like this even when
that's
they
the
were
problem.
playing.
It wasn't.
Yeah, it's not that it's surprising. It's just disappointing that every time in the second half you need key first downs, you need a big play. They're not making it. It just seemed like no matter and they were getting to Bo Nix like almost every play. It's not like they weren't getting pressure on. They just couldn't take him down. And then you can't expect your defensive backs, linebackers to cover for 5, 6, 7 seconds. So
Bo Nix made some Johnny Manziel plays, man. I hate to bring that name up, but there were some points. LSU was getting to the air around Bo Nix. They just weren't getting to Bo Nix.
Which is crazy because Johnny Manziel struggled against LSU. So it's not like they haven't seen that type of quarterback before or someone that can make plays like that. It's just undisciplined football outside the pocket, and then offensively you just can't run the ball. And that was a big question going into the game. Can they run the ball? And they can't. And you can't expect Max Johnson to drop back 40, 50 times and win with his arm.
And listen, man, that is going to bother people at LSU. It's one thing if you've got Joe Burrow and you're winning. And by the way, the year they had Joe Burrow, Clyde Edwards-Helaire ran for 1,000 yards anyway. So it wasn't like they weren't running the ball. But if you can't run the ball, that is going to stick in the craw of people at LSU, including Scott Woodward, by the way. So Ed Ogeron very much on hot seat watch here as they go to Kentucky next week. We spent long enough on college. Let's move on to the NFL. Another crazy NFL Sunday. We talked about the New York teams, the Giants winning in New Orleans, the Jets beating the Titans at home, Cowboys win a shootout again, Browns win a slugfest again, Bucks have to survive a doink at the end against New England. Jim, what were your takeaways here? The Cardinals might be the best team in the NFL?
No. They were yesterday. So it's hard to take anything. I had a friend of mine text me yesterday asking me if I still think the Rams are the best team in the NFL, and I do. But you cannot take anything away from what Arizona was able to do yesterday. They did it on both sides of the ball. Kyler Murray, as he's done throughout his career, made some incredible plays to get out of trouble. They were able to run the ball in the red zone. James Conner didn't have great stats, but he scored twice. And when they got down inside the 5, they stuffed it down the Rams' throats. Yesterday, they were the best team in football. How that correlates to the rest of the season, we'll see. I'm not sold yet. However, what I learned yesterday is there is a lot of parity in the NFL. And I was very high on Tennessee coming into this week. Obviously, what I did with my big Bucks pick, but in all seriousness, I thought this was a Super Bowl type team, and even without Julio Jones and Big AJ, who can make every catch that thrown anywhere in his vicinity, I thought even without those two guys that they would find a way to not only win but cover against the Jets team that I don't think is any good. But I was really shocked at just how Tannehill just got pounded yesterday. Derrick
Robert
Henry,
Saleh, man, that defense
I
is coming.
know, and I kept waiting for the Jets to have this kind of effort, and I don't know why it took so long, but I kept picking them. I picked them against the spread even in my picks column last week because I can't believe that defense is not really good. But for Tennessee, there were some really disappointing performances, and not just because they lost, but I'm rambling, but Mac Jones to me showed a lot last night with all that was going on and the hype surrounded Tom Brady to come out and play like he did. And they were a doink off the crossbar from the post away from beaten Tampa Bay. And Mac Jones held his poise. You want to talk about teams with no running game. New England has zero running game. They look worse than LSU when it comes to running the football. They can't get anything going, and Mac Jones held up under fire, and so I was really impressed about that. There were a lot of things to like about last night, and it's going to make for an easy picks column to write this week because it was a fun weekend of NFL, even though the Saints lost.
The one thing keeping the Titans from, in my mind, ever being a Super Bowl team, they don't play good enough defense. They're just not good enough defensively to be a Super Bowl team, and I've never thought they were, and I've not been as high on them. They're still a playoff team. Look, the AFC South is horrible. They're still going to win the AFC South, so they're going to get in. They're going to have a shot. Devin, yay or nay, the Cardinals are the best team in the NFL right now?
I don't think so. I'm just worried about their play being sustainable because they've been able to score a ton of points every single game, but we haven't seen them struggle offensively in a game and still win the game. So I kind of want to see that. Their division is really tough. And I think they still have questions about their defense. They play really, really well against a really good Rams team, but I don't know if their play is sustainable necessarily. So I wouldn't say they're the best team, but they're definitely making a case that they could be a playoff team and be a serious playoff threat if Kyler Murray continues to play at the level he is.
Well, one thing you notice about those results, throw those results back up there one minute. It is tough to lay points in the NFL as a bettor. The Saints, you look, they're a better team than the Giants. 7 points, sure, they're going back to the dome. Tom Brady's not going to lose to his old team. Lay the points. The Titans aren't going to lose to the Jets. Lay the point. There's so many NFL games that are decided within a touchdown, even when the better team wins, that it's very difficult to do that. Now, the counterpoint to that's the Buffalo Bills, who were minus 16 and a half against Houston, and they beat them by 40. So it does happen. But if you can take those situations and pick the underdog on the money line, some real good things can happen. And that brings you to, I won't sing for you. Then I will start spreading the news. The Frank Sinatra Memorial Underdog Parlay yesterday. You took the two New York teams, New York. Giants plus 270 at the Saints. Jets plus 205 at home against Tennessee. That parlay paid plus 1028, better than 10-1. And there was a Caesars bettor in New Jersey who bet $5,000 on that parlay. I don't suggest you start betting $5,000 on 10-1 parlays, but it's pretty fun when they work out. and he took the book, counting his original $5,000 for $56,000. Alternatively, this is called the anti-Jim Derry Memorial Parlay.
I was going to say I might have to start doing these kind of parlays to get even within like air raid distance of Devin Jackson, because I'm falling so far in a hole that I'm not going to be able to climb out with a ladder, and I'm too fat to climb out of any hole anyway.
We'll see. We didn't do big bucks totals. Devin's got a bet on the Monday night game tonight, but it was like, I think he's like $800, $900 up on you, and he's $200 or $300 up on me too. So I'm sort of treading water, and you guys are going in opposite directions. So we'll talk more about.
I'm going to say this, Zach. I will say that I got to throw this in because I know my media friends are out there listening. But I was in like 8th place in my fantasy baseball league at the end of May, and I won by 8 points yesterday. So I'm just saying it can happen. Comebacks can happen. It's only October. Confidence
is still there. I like it. Speaking of Monday night, to wrap up the NFL weekend, it's a good one tonight. You don't always get a good Monday night football game, but tonight we have from SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, the Las Vegas Raiders at the Los Angeles Chargers. Chargers are laying a field goal here. Devin, what's your take here?
I think this is going to be a classic AFC West game. I think this is the game for the Raiders to prove that, those first couple of weeks weren't a fluke. They've been winning close games, and in the NFL, I think that, it's a difference between a winning season and a losing season. Can you continually win the close games? I think it'll be another close one. But I think Las Vegas has the upper hand in this game. This really isn't necessarily a home game for the Chargers. They don't really necessarily fill up the seats, so to speak. But I think, a lot of Raiders fans will fill the crowd, and it'll kind of be like a home atmosphere for them. But they're going up against Justin Herbert, who's one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL right now. So their defenses are really going to have to show up and put pressure on him. And Derek Carr has to continue to play at a high level. But this should be a really good game, and I'm excited to see how it turns out.
Jim, you may make fun of me because this is probably the public side on this game. 51.5 doesn't seem high enough. Now that I say that, it'll end up being 17-14. But like 50, these two teams can score points.
I'm not going to make fun of you. I just think you're wrong. I think it's going to be under. But look, who knows though? But here's the thing: the unknown more than anything. Is Derek Carr really as good as he's shown the first 3 weeks of the season? I mean, I guess when you get into week 4, so if he proves it again tonight, I guess you just have to eat it and say he is that good. Because the Raiders have been without or limited with Josh Jacobs for most of the season. And tonight he comes in questionable, so he'll probably play. Peyton Barber, I mean, that's who you're counting on. And Derek Carr keeps doing it. He keeps locking in on Darren Waller, and he keeps finding ways to make things happen. Henry Ruggs makes a play here and there. I am not sold on the Raiders, and I am sold on the Chargers. They're playing outstanding football, and they have a good defense. So I think both of these teams have a decent defense. This is why I think 51.5 is a little bit too high. But I probably wouldn't touch the under. I really like the Chargers in this game. Justin Herbert is that good, and Austin Eckler is good enough, and their defense is certainly good enough. And I think the Chargers are playing with a little chip on their shoulders, and I like it.
Devin, you had the Raiders in this game, right? You're big bucks. Yeah. You're in trouble, Jim. You're in trouble.
I know. So
you better stay away.
There's 100%. I mean, I was 5-3 against Carville this week again. So if you take up the two home teams, the Saints and LSU, I'm 5-1. I don't know what got me to pick the Saints and LSU this week. I must have been like jumping on the joy bandwagon, and I need to get off that thing.
I picked the Saints, and I regretted it within a day. But by that point, it's been in the newspaper. It's too late to change it. And so I really did not like the Saints minus the 7.5 that it was at that time. Hey, I will say one thing. Derek Carr, if you look at stats, has very rarely been the problem for the Raiders. They haven't been very good in his career, except for the 1 year that he was nearly the MVP and then broke his leg at the end of it. But he's very rarely been the problem. It's been defense or it's been running game. I think Derek Carr, and again, I've mentioned this before, I'm a homer. I know the Carr family personally, but he's not the problem. He can lead a team to the playoffs, but we'll see about. I mean, they're winning close games. That's not really sustainable. So we'll see what happens. Hey, I want to switch gears for a second. Major League Baseball playoffs starting tomorrow. Unfortunately, my Seattle Mariners did not make it in. I'm a little heartbroken still about that, but we do have a couple of really good wild card games between traditional powers here. Yankees starting Garrett Cole, they're slight favorites at the Red Sox tomorrow. And then on Wednesday night, you get the Cardinals, who have won like 18 out of 21 games or something. They're red hot. But the Dodgers have won like 18 out of 21 games too. People just don't notice because the Giants were able to hold them off. And then the other series that are already set, Astros at White Sox, that's a series price. Brewers favored over the Braves. And then at the bottom, we have World Series favorites. The Dodgers, even though they got to play that one-and-done wild card game on Wednesday, are still your World Series favorites. And the Giants, who won 107 games, are only the third or fourth choice off the board, I believe. But you guys have a take on this?
I definitely have a take. Look, I talked about this with Jeff Duncan in the special Monday episode of Datitude that is actually out now. But the Giants, how do you win 107 games and nobody's paying attention? This might have been one of the best baseball seasons in recent memory, and no one noticed. It's sad. It certainly was one of the better Septembers and early Octobers that I can remember. And coming down to the last day, and I got to tell you, Zach, I don't care about the Mariners one way or the other, but I had to feel for them yesterday. The tears on the field that were real, and I mean, goodness gracious, I mean, I've been there. I've felt that before as a Cubs fan, many, 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 many times. So I understand. But it was such an exciting last week of the season. I watched the Dodgers and Giants games every night. They're just going. They wouldn't lose. Neither one of them would lose.
Oh, it was amazing. No, I think. What the stat since the trade deadline when the Dodgers got Max Scherzer and Trey Turner and everybody thought, okay, they're going to run away with it. They went 44-13, 44-13, and only gained 2 games in the standings because the Giants went, what is that, 41-16 or whatever it was. I mean, like
how do they win with that lineup too? Evan Longoria, Brandon Crawford's got to be 38 years old. Brandon Belt can barely walk. They have a pitching staff that's underwhelming. Kevin Gausman's great. That's fine. Buster Posey, how old is that dude? How can he still squat? I mean, it's amazing what the Giants have done, and you can't help but root for a team like that. And I don't understand why the Dodgers are still. I mean, I guess the public eyes, they see Trey Turner, and you talk about Max Scherzer and Walker Buehler and
that pitching staff, man. That pitching staff's incredible. If they get by Wednesday, they're legit favorites in my mind.
They're going to get by Wednesday.
They should. I mean, Adam Wainwright's tough for the Cardinals. Scherzer hasn't looked good his last couple starts. I think if you're betting that game, Cardinals plus 193 looks pretty good. But I do think the Dodgers will win. If they get by, they're legitimate favorites. But by the way, let me get on my soapbox for a minute. You talk about real tears. Okay, yes, I know the Cubs have had tough times. They at least make the dance every now and then. The Mariners haven't made the playoffs since I was in high school. I have kids who are closer to high school than they are to being born now, and they still haven't made. It's not that hard to make the playoffs. It's not that hard. They won 90 games.
Bring back Ken Griffey and Randy Johnson. He can pitch Game 7 and all over again, and it'll be good.
And they won more games this year than they did in '95, which was the magical year that they finally made it with Griffey. The Edgar Martinez hit the double to beat the Yankees, and instead they win 90 games, and it's the freaking Yankees and Red Sox again. Although, Devin, Yankees-Red Sox will be pretty fun to watch tomorrow night.
Yeah, that's obviously a big rivalry. They played some really close games over the last few weeks as well. So watching kind of that race, because I really haven't been paying a whole bunch of attention, admittedly, to baseball with everything going on with football and whatnot, but over the last couple of weeks, I've kind of got more invested in watching kind of the race come down to the last day. I mean, it's exciting for baseball to have that kind of happen. But that Mariners not being able to win yesterday, that's just tough.
We had a chance at a 3-way or 4-way tie too, which I'm always rooting for chaos, and it just didn't get it. We don't have any tiebreakers tonight.
You know what I would love to see, Zach? I would love to see just to throw it at Mr. Manford. Man and his band. I would love to see a Tampa Bay San Francisco World Series, and the only people that are going to watch are the people that love baseball like me.
I mean, I'm always rooting for what's best for baseball, but I wouldn't mind that either because honestly, like Dodgers, Yankees, I mean, just gag me. We haven't even talked about the Astros. Astros have had a great season too, and they're favored to beat the White Sox, and that's sort of our regional team here. I know the Astros around here, you either love them or hate them, but they've got that's a heck of a series against the White Sox as well. Hey, we're running out of time, so let's look ahead real quick. Those wild card games are Tuesday and Wednesday, and then it'll be time to the division series, and now next weekend of football. So let's look ahead. The college football lines for next week. We talked about LSU at undefeated Kentucky. How many times have these two met? And Kentucky's the top 25 team. This might be the first ever time. And LSU's unranked. Kentucky favored by 3. Oklahoma favored by 3 in the annual Red River. What do they call it now? Red River Showdown? They can't call it a
showdown, I think.
Showdown.
So Oklahoma favored by 3 at a neutral site there at the Cotton Bowl. Ole Miss, they are lying 6.5 against Arkansas. Georgia, 14.5 on the Plains at Auburn, another rivalry game. And then the big one, Penn State, Iowa. This is interesting, Jim. You talk about Iowa. This game opened up as a pick, and Iowa has quickly gone up to -2.5. So finally getting a little bit of respect.
They are, and I hate to debunk my own theory, but I guess the public does like Iowa after all. So that is, or somebody with a lot of money likes Iowa for sure.
Yeah, it could be public, or it could be a couple big sharp bets.
What is the under? Do you know off
I do not know that offhand, but I'll bet it's low.
I was going to say, whatever it is, I might take the under. I don't think you can go low enough in that one. And, kind of like you get the big number 80s or close to 80 with Alabama and Ole Miss last week. This one could be in the low 40s, which is insanely low in college football.
Devin, put those lines back up. And what do you? I'm going to look up the over under on that Penn State Iowa game. While you give me your thoughts on those college football lines.
The one that kind of sticks out to me, I don't know if I like the Oklahoma line, and they've been winning close games, and I know Texas has kind of been up and down, but in a rivalry game like that, I don't know if I trust Oklahoma to lay the points. Texas is much improved. I don't think they win the game necessarily, but I think it's closer than that. I think it's literally a 1 or 2 point game. So that one kind of stuck out to me. Also, the Ole Miss Arkansas game sticks out to me. Arkansas, we saw their offense isn't great. I mean, we played Georgia. They really couldn't do anything against Georgia. I'm kind of interested to see what the over under in that game is as well. But I thought Ole Miss would be a little bit of a higher favorite in that game particularly. And then the Penn State Iowa game, that line is surprising to me. I thought that was going to be a pick 'em pretty much. Two really good offenses that play complementary football. So that one was surprising to me as well.
That'll be a sight to see. And Jim, you were right. Low 40s. 42 is the total on that game. It's the first Big Ten game between two top 5 teams when neither of them is Ohio State or Michigan. I know that's a lot, but okay, 2 top 5 teams without Ohio State or Michigan. It's only the second time in Big Ten history that's happened, and the first one I think was 1960 or 62 is Minnesota and Wisconsin. So this is like historic for the Big Ten to have a game like this that doesn't involve Ohio State or Michigan, but it should be a good one. Week 5 NFL lines. Saints are 1 point favorites at the Washington football team. Jim, you were saying this is a must-win game for New Orleans.
I definitely think it is a must-win game, and not spoiler alert, I'm probably going to take the Saints because I think that over the Sean Payton era, except for that little stretch when they went 7-9 3 years in a row, I think they've done very well when they've absolutely had to win. Their backs are against the wall. They know it's a must-win game, and I think the Saints will fare well this week. It's hard to be high on them after what we saw yesterday. And actually, Taylor Heineke is a scary quarterback for them because the Saints haven't had a great pass rush the last few weeks, and he's a guy that can get out of a pass rush. Other than Terry McLaurin, I'm not sure what other kind of big weapons they have on the outside, and Logan Thomas is injured, their tight end, who is a big threat as well. So the key is obviously going to be stopping Antonio Gibson and also stopping McLaurin. If you can look at those two guys, I think the Saints will be in decent shape. They'll have a good game plan for this week.
Amazing. The Saints just got back home, and then they go 3 more weeks without a home game. They have this game,
Halloween.
then a bye week. Yeah, and then they're on the road again after the bye week. So other notable lines, some road favorites here. The Rams at the Seahawks. That's a big Thursday night game. Short turnaround for those teams in a big NFC West game there. Packers line 3.5 at the Bengals. Bengals are 3-1, so that's a decently big game. Both of those teams are 3-1, and then this line may change after tonight's game. But Browns and Chargers right now is a pick'em out in LA, and then the Bills catching 2.5 at Kansas City. Big Sunday night game next week. Devin, any thoughts on that slate for next week?
Bills Chiefs. I would not be surprised to see that line kind of dip over the course of the week. I think the Bills offense has really gotten going. Chiefs defense has been bad and they haven't gotten any better. So I would not be surprised if that line kind of decreased over the course of the week. Browns Chargers, I think maybe the Browns probably a 1-2 point favorite when it's all said and done. But I wouldn't be surprised if either team won. But that Bills Chiefs line, I would expect it to change over the course of the week.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough week for Survivor if anybody's actually left after the Titans and Saints knocked out a bunch of people yesterday, like me. But there's only a couple of lines that are over 7 points next week. Bucks are one of them. I think the Ravens on Monday Night Football, the Vikings against the Lions. But you have some tough choices. Speaking of Monday night, one more time, Raiders Chargers tonight should be a real good one. And, really will shape that AFC West race for the rest of the year because the Chiefs already have a couple of losses. The winner of this game will be in the driver's seat in the AFC West moving forward. So we're looking forward to that one. And we thank you for joining us on a weekend recap here on Odds and Ends. Final thoughts from Devin Jackson.
Just another wild weekend of football. Just really unpredictable. I think, we haven't had this type of chaos in a while in both the NFL and college football. So it's really good to see kind of the parity, especially in the NFL. Same teams aren't always winning or rising to the top. We have a lot of unlikely teams at the top of their divisions, and we'll see if they continue to do so.
Yeah, it's always fun when you have a little bit of uncertainty that the good teams aren't just dominating from the start. Jim, how about you?
2 things. I got to give you props on Kansas City. You were absolutely right about the Chiefs and how they rolled against the Eagles, which means that I'm going to be – does it mean it's time to get back on the betting train?
Bet against Buffalo at your own risk now. But
look,
yeah.
I'll tell you this. I have been decent in the NFL. My college picks stink. But I will say this. I think that Buffalo, we don't know how good they are because they haven't played a lot of good teams. We're going to find out a lot about them this week. No spoiler alerts there. And lastly, I'm going to be like a dog at Devin Jackson's table waiting for the last scrap of meatloaf. Whatever he takes this week in big bucks, I'm going to ask him for the ones that he didn't take, and I might just go and use those. Here, boy, please give me some meatloaf. Give me some picks, Devin Jackson.
If there's one thing that can spoil Devin Jackson's big bucks picks, it's sharing them with Jim Derry because he's poisoned right now. So I wouldn't do that if I were you. Yeah, I don't know about that. You may drag both of y'all down then. Listen, I know it was a bad weekend in Louisiana football. We had to pick the Band-Aid for you. LSU loses to Auburn. The Saints lose to the Giants. But hey, there's always next week. There's baseball playoffs, a couple of fantastic wild card games. We're going to be back with you tomorrow, a new special day for the Fantasy Roundup, myself and Spencer Urquhart, to talk through fantasy football, getting to you a day earlier now so that we can get some waiver wire picks in. And then on Thursday, we'll be back with At the Book. We'll talk about Week 6 in college football, Week 5 in the NFL, and a big Thursday night game between the Rams and the Seahawks. So until then, for Devin Jackson and Jim Derry, this has been Odds and Ends. I'm Zach Ewing. We'll see you next time.